Well, welcome to the Volunteer Rocket webinar. I'm so fired up to be here with you guys today. It's an awesome honor to talk about volunteers and volunteering in the church. This webinar is going to be about how to gain, train, and retain volunteers. Gain, have more, train, make them do better at their jobs and become more like Jesus, and then retain them over the long haul. And so we're excited to talk about this, as this is a huge topic for just about every type of church. That anybody has volunteers for that, but every type of church I know uses and has some type of volunteer structure or ministry or volunteers that do something in place. And so hopefully we'll help you with the how-tos on this, because that's what we do. This is me. I'm Casey. I'm the bald-headed guy. I'm the founder of the Rocket Company, and it's so awesome to have 3 different brands that we help churches with. One is Giving Rocket. We help churches increase regular giving. We hate capital campaign stuff. That's not our cup of tea. We stay out of that. What we help churches do is increase regular giving. Preaching Rocket. We help preachers preach better sermons, which is awesome. And then Volunteer Rocket, and that's what this is about today, is how to gain, train, and retain more volunteers. So always let people know that I co-authored a book called Funded and Free that goes along with the whole Giving Rocket idea of helping churches have more money for ministry. And so you can grab that at Amazon and pick it up. It's so super helpful, and it's just a great book. So we'd love to help you out increasing giving in your church. So that's me. That's a little bit of my story. That's my bald head, and I want to go ahead and let you know how to connect with us. And the best way to connect with us on this webinar is to follow. If you do this right now, if you're on Twitter, follow at The Rocket Co. That's where we send out a lot of helpful information, and all of our stuff, all of the free content flows out of that. And then tweet. If you're tweeting or you're on Facebook or whatever, but the hashtag for this webinar is Volunteer Rocket. And so you can go ahead and blow us up at the hashtag and follow the Rocket Co. and just let us know that you're fired up. Say, I'm fired up, Casey, and we'll get fired up with you too. So as you can tell, we like to get excited. I talk fast. If you don't like that, then probably you want to get out of here, because I get fired up talking about how-tos for the church and being helpful in helping the church succeed. So if I were you, I'd be asking this question: why should you listen to us? Why should you listen to us? Like, who are you, and what do you have to say about volunteers, and what does that have anything to do with what you're doing right now with volunteers, and why should you listen? And I'm going to give you just an outline for this whole thing of why you should listen, and then we're going to get into the how-tos. I'm going to tell you about Volunteer Rocket as well, so just know that's coming up. That I'm going to say, hey, here's Volunteer Rocket. If you want to jump in, you can be a part of it. If not, totally cool. But you're going to walk away from this webinar with a lot of great helpful content, and so it's stuff you can take and you can apply in your ministry pretty much immediately. So why should you listen to us? This is an outline of a diagram that I drew in 2007. I found this in my journal the other day. And you say, what does this have to do with anything? This is the ministry that I was leading. You can see my name at the top under recruit. And we'll have an A+ because we're ranking how we were doing at the time. We have train over there. You can see connect at the bottom, support, monitor, and I have people's names because I have led volunteer ministry. In 2007, from 2002 to about 2008, I was over all volunteers in small group ministry, spiritual decision counseling, over volunteers, guest services, all this stuff. And so recruiting, training, connecting, supporting. We had this whole system drawn up, and so I've led volunteer ministry. That's the point. This is an awesome picture. You say, who are these people? You see me at the very top. You see my bald head poking out. This is my 8th grade small group. We just got off a weekend with them not too long ago at our church. And so for the last 3 years, I decided to put our money where our mouth was and say, I'm going to volunteer with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And so my group started, they were 6th graders, now they're 8th graders. And you can see some of the crazy stuff that we put up with. And so this is our group. And it was awesome the weekend. But I'm a volunteer leader, and I've been through the volunteer processes. And I'm at North Point Community Church, Pastor Andy Stanley. And so I've been under some of the best volunteer leadership that I've ever seen. And so not only have I led it as a pastor on staff at a church, I've also been involved for the last 3 years with volunteering. And then this slide shows We have gone out, and everything you're going to learn today comes out of these ministries and what we've learned and the experiences of our team. We have studied in depth North Point Ministries, Church of the Highlands, New Spring Church, Granger Community Church, Fraser United Methodist Church, and Revolution Church in San Antonio, Texas. And we've done a bunch more, but these are people that we've dug deep into, and we've looked at and we've done studies on what are they doing well, how are they gaining, training, and retaining volunteers. And we've boiled it down to all 5 practical little system points that you can take away from this webinar and you can use. So not only have I led these, not only have I done the last 3 years as a volunteer and volunteering with students, that are crazy half the time, but we literally have gone on a research study. And so over the last year, we have studied and we've said, what do churches that do volunteers well do? And so we're going to dig in and we're going to put all of our experiences together, and we've come up with a crazy good, simple to understand system that's going to be helpful for you. So that's where Volunteer Rocket comes in. So let's jump in. Let's get to the helpful content, and I'm about to show you some helpful stuff that you can apply to your ministry today. So here's my face, and they said, Casey, make a fulfilled face. If you were just so happy, what would it look like? And this is what it came out. So that's me acting like a complete moron. But volunteers should be the most fulfilled people in your church. We believe as a guiding principles that your volunteers should be the most fulfilled, not the most burned out. And so as we went on this journey, what we found is that the biggest question people are asking, pastors are asking, is how do I not burn out my best volunteers? And how do I keep them fulfilled and engaged and excited about what they're doing? And so that's what the system that we're going to teach you today is going to help you do, is help them become fulfilled where they're saying this is the best place to volunteer. And I'm not talking about just the renegade few, but all your volunteers where they're wanting to come up, they're wanting to show up, they're wanting to be a part, and they're very fulfilled. Also, give away leadership and responsibility as a guiding principle. This is something that we found that all the churches do well, that they were trying to create fulfilled volunteers and then give away leadership and responsibility. Here's the deal. You being Superman and trying to do all of the ministry yourself and recruit everybody and train everybody and connect everybody and all that kind of stuff, listen, that doesn't work. It breaks down. You only have so much capacity. And actually the biblical model is when you look in Exodus at what's called the Jethro principle, and when you look at Acts chapter 6 and you look at that, you can see that the model of the way to grow and scale anything is to give leadership and responsibility away. So our model that we're going to teach you is going to allow you to involve more people in leadership, more people in volunteer roles. You're going to have more people, and you're going to give away leadership and give away responsibility. Now, everybody agrees with this in principle, but few people actually do it. And so that's going to be a guiding principle of how we're going to help you, guide you through how to give away leadership so you have more leaders and more responsibilities divvied out where people can do better at what they do. And then create a volunteer ministry before you ask for a volunteer. Now, this is going to be a guiding principle. It's one of the 3 things that bubbled up as big things to say. If we're going to guide a principle, if we're going to create a model of everything that we've studied, everything that we've experienced, everything that we've done, then what we found is that you better create a ministry before you ask for another volunteer. And what that means is in Luke 14:28, Jesus talked about this, and he said, if you're smart, you're going to count the cost before you go out and build something, before you go build some tower, before you go build a house, before you build something, you're going to count the cost. And you're going to build a foundation. You're going to build this thing right. And so in Luke 14:28, you can look it up and just see that before you go out and just start building something, you got a plan. You got to have a system. You have to count the cost. You have to know exactly what you're going to do and what the system is going to be to make it work. And so that's what we're going to do. Those 3 guiding principles are what's going to guide this model. And guys, this is just how it is. And we've seen it, we've found it, and now we're so excited to roll it out to share with you what you can go do and implement. And I'm telling you, this is gold. When I used to teach some of this stuff, it wasn't fully formed, but I used to teach some of this stuff when I was a volunteer pastor. Our breakouts at conferences would be overflowing because people would say, tell me the system. How do you do this in an organized way? Please take the stress out of people calling me on Saturday and saying they can't show up for Sunday. All of that stuff that we deal with in churches when we're dealing with volunteers, that we can't hang a paycheck over their head, that people are showing up on their own and they're saying, I want to volunteer. How do we create a great, predictable, awesome weekend service and service to our community every single week? So let's get to it. Volunteer Rocket. Here it is. This is what we found. I'm going to walk you through this big picture, and then we're going to get down to what every church that wants to have a thriving ministry will have, a volunteer ministry. Now, this is the basis for volunteer ministry. There's 5 things you've got to do, and you want to write these down, remember these, tattoo these, print this out, whatever you got to do. But the first thing you see at the very top is attract. Attract. Now, you're going to notice that the beginning of the letters of these is A, B, C, D, E, because we have worked on this and broken it down into such a doable format. And what attract means is it means just to attract more volunteers to your ministry. Let me ask you a question. Do you want more volunteers for your ministry? Yes or no? Yes. That's what most ministry leaders and pastors do. So you've got to have a system that attracts people. Number 2, build. That's the B. So you've got to build those people up. You don't recruit people into the army. They don't recruit people into the army and just send them straight to war. But that's what we do with volunteers most of the time. We recruit them in, just send them straight to volunteer. No. You got to have a boot camp. You got to build them up. You got to have a place where they know what is expected of them and what they should be doing and what they should not be doing and what time do they show up and just training. So you got to build up the volunteers so they're built up, they're ready to go, and they're ready to start volunteering. Number 3 is connect. You've got to connect them to where they're volunteering. They got to know who they're reporting to, who they're going to be serving, who is under their care. What are they doing within the first 100 days of showing up? What's the plan within the first 30 days? Is there a checklist that you have to say, this is how we onboard a volunteer? Number 4 is develop. You say, what is develop? It means to develop the volunteers long term. And here's how we're going to develop them. And so many churches leave this piece out. Developing them not to just do a task. You're not developing them to just be a greeter or just be a small group leader or just do an activity, but you're developing their relationship with Jesus, where they become more like Christ, and they're inspired and they're developed in a way to do that. And so that's what we mean by develop, is an ongoing development that reduces burnout and increases people excited about what they do. And then number 5 is evaluate. Just about every church we work with, none of them do this at all. They do not evaluate metrics. And so you say, what does that mean? I'm going to get into a little bit later what that means, but it's evaluating the qualitative, not the quantitative. That church leaders, we usually just hang our hats on the whole thing of saying, well, so-and-so's happy, so they're all happy. No. Looking at metrics of how many people are signed up to show up, are the rosters clean, whatever the metrics are, the numbers that we need to see every single week, every single month to know if we're being successful. And if you do A, attract, B, build, C, connect, D, develop, and E, evaluate, and it's ongoing, it's forever. You'll always be attracting, you'll always be building, you'll always be connecting, you'll always be developing, you'll always be evaluating. And if you put these pieces together, you can create a volunteer ministry that will thrive for years to come and thrive even after you're gone, because it's a system. This is a system. And so I'm giving you the system now. Now I'm going to break these down, and I'm going to give you practical things that you can walk away with inside of each one of the systems. So you say, attract. What does attract mean? Well, attract is that every church needs a system for recruiting volunteers. Do you have a system systematically for recruiting volunteers? Here's what we would say is the number one thing, of actionable item that you've got to do, is that you have to understand that you've got to attract volunteers. Clarify how many volunteer positions you have open. You've got to know how many positions do you have open. And you say, well, how do I know how many positions I have open? We're going to teach you a little bit later. Well, here's what you've got to eliminate. You've got to eliminate the phrase, we need more volunteers. No, if anybody in your church says that, you should say, how many? How many volunteers do we need? Because an attraction system of knowing how often you're going to ask and how many positions you've got to fill in all your different ministry areas, you've got to have a system for, does the pastor do this? Does a person do this? How do we get this done? And so that's what attracting is. So the thing you've got to start with, this is where we would say you got to absolutely start, is create a volunteer org chart. Do you have a volunteer org chart that's written down and it's put up in the wall of the person who the volunteer ministry director is? So this is what a little bit of what we've done inside of Volunteer Rocket. And you can see the organizational chart templates are included in Volunteer Rocket. So we have templates for how to do this. So this is just an example, a breakdown of volunteer ministry where you'd say guest services, creative arts, administrative, family ministry director, whatever, and who's over all these, and having these written down and having all the positions broken down to where it's on paper and it's hung up. Do you have that? If you don't have that, it's worth being on this webinar today to know that you've got to do that. Now, inside of Volunteer Rocket, we coach you on how to put this together and to do it right so you get it right the first time. So if you want to be a part of that, and we'll coach you through it, but this is just if you're just watching this and you wanted to do a go away, how do I know how many volunteer openings I have? This is what will create your attraction system. If you need 500 people or 5 people or whatever, it shouldn't be a guess. It should be on a wall, and you should see the positions open and know how many positions do you have available. So that's attract. B is build volunteer training so you can build your team. Do you have volunteer training for your team? So build. Here's what you should be building up in your volunteer training in a systematic way. Number 1 is vision alignment. Vision alignment, getting people on board with your vision. If you have people that they're disengaged or they're not connected to the vision in which you have for the church and what volunteers should be doing, then you need to find that out before you just stick them as a small group leader. Man, when at North Point, they took 3 months to onboard me, and it was interviews, and I talked to people, and we had conversations. Why is that so important? Because if you do it on the front end, it's way less likely that you're going to have vision issues on the back end, and you're way less likely you're going to have tension with volunteers. And so you have the opportunity to do it right if you have a training system on the front end that helps you understand vision alignment between your volunteer and what you have a vision for your church and this volunteer role that you're asking them to do it. The other one's job clarity. Building job clarity, and do you have job clarity for people? They know exactly what's expected of them on a sheet of paper. Do you have it written down? And that's what you should do before they even start volunteering. And then also, need to know, need to grow training. Man, I can't tell you how important this is. But creating the system in which you have, and there's many different ways to do it. And every church that we identified did it in different ways. And in Volunteer Rocket, we break down how to do this. And I don't have time to give you all of it. I want to do the overview of the funnel today, and you can drill down further into Volunteer Rocket if you want to know all the ins and outs of how to build a training system that people will love. But here's what the commonalities of all of them are. Vision alignment, job clarity, need to know, need to grow training. And you say, what does need to grow, need to know, need to grow? Well, here's the reality with need to know, need to grow. I was a small group leader, and when they trained me at North Point, they just told me what I needed to know. They didn't tell me everything I needed to know, but what I needed to know right then. And so you don't need to know every situation and everything. Some people put people in 8-hour training sessions to be small group leaders and greeters and all that stuff. Listen, people don't. They're just showing up because they're supposed to, and they're supposed. You told them to show up. They don't want to be there. Just tell them what they need to know and when they need to know it, and that's it. So it's need to grow training, and we've seen that churches do this very well. And so inside of Volunteer Rocket, the best part about Volunteer Rocket is that we've done all this stuff for you. And so you can see that we've got, this is the expectation sheet. This says the opportunity is a lead greeter. And this is the description, the lead 930 host team to create a warm environment for all new guests. Sunday mornings from 8:45 to 10:45. And then reports to Connections Pastor Jimmy at Crossroads Church. And then you list what their responsibilities are. Here's my question for you. If you're watching this right now, do you have ministry descriptions for every single person that's a volunteer in your church? If you do not, and this is what a ministry description is, where expectations are formed, if you don't have that, you're going to create an environment that's not healthy over the long haul, and people will fall between the cracks, and they will not know. So do you have a system in place to do this? Inside of Volunteer Rocket, we have over 100 job descriptions just like this that are done for you. So we're fired up about that. And so if you want to be a part and not have to do it all on your own, that's what Volunteer Rocket can help you with, okay? That's the second part of the funnel. So you attract a new person in. So a person comes in, you get them in the system, and the way you get them in the system is the pastor may preach about volunteering. There may be many different things that happen to get somebody to raise their hand and say, I'm in. You build them up. You put them in some type of training program where you do clarify their job, you clarify the vision, and then you tell them what they need to know to get started. But then connecting is onboarding strategy, where you onboard. It's an onboarding strategy to connect people to relationships, not just responsibilities. So here's what you have to do when you have a new volunteer that's connected in, and what's got to happen. They've got to know who they're connected to, not just the job that they're going to do, but who's connected above them. Who is connected above them? And what we mean by that is, who do they report to? Do they have a systematic, do they know the person's email? Do they have a checklist to say that this person is going to show up and show them what the ropes are and what their job is? Do they know who they report to if they have a problem? Connecting above them is huge. Connecting beside them. So do you have people that, do you have a checklist that shows them who their team is? Do you have a checklist that shows, here's what you do when the person says, when they show up that day to connect? What a lot of churches do is that you just put people in a small group, you put them at a front door to greet, you put them on the usher team, but you don't have a systematic way which you connect the people that they're going to be working with. Just showing a volunteer up and say, hey, here's your team, here's John, here's Bob, or whatever, is a terrible strategy. Do you have a strategy to connect people within the first 30 days of people above them, people beside them working on their team, and the people under them that they're serving? So for me, the people under me, under my care, are my 8th grade students. And do you have an onboarding checklist to say, here's what they need to do before they start serving on their own? Well, at North Point, the church that I attend, and being an 8th grade small group leader, this was huge. And so what they did is they made me shadow 3 other leaders. And then after I shadowed, they gave me my group. And then when they gave me my group, they gave it to me at a boot camp. And the boot camp was an introductory weekend. And after the introductory weekend where we got to know each other, we met parents at the drop-off and all that kind of stuff, then they let me go have my group on my own. And you say, well, what in the world does that have anything to do with it? It has everything to do with it. Whether you have a person that's a greeter or you have a person that's a small group leader, you have a greeter in your children's ministry, a check-in person, it doesn't matter. If you have an usher, a board member, I don't care what you do. Do you have a person that's onboarding? Do you have a checklist for every single ministry area and position to say, here's what happens with all of these, and they go through this? Because here's what we learned. In our research, we read that Bill Hybels said a new volunteer is a fragile volunteer. And so when you get new volunteers in, you have to be careful and you've got to know that they are fragile. So that's what we mean by connecting, okay? And so here's a volunteer ministry connection plan. This is inside a volunteer rocket, and you see who they're connected to, what they've got to do, when, what day they're doing it, and was it completed. And this is a system for connecting volunteers. It's worth the whole program just to get these systems to be a part. And so that's done for you. We've already thought through how people need to connect. Develop. D, ongoing to support to help volunteers avoid burnout. Because listen, volunteering is hard. I've been a volunteer for the past 3 years, and I know I've been on both sides of it. I've been the pastor over volunteers, and I've been a volunteer. And I'm telling you, it is easy to just get burned out. It's easy to just say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. It's easy to do it. So how are you developing an ongoing relationship that people want to be engaged, they want to be fired up, they want to keep going, they want to have a white-hot passion for your church and what you're doing? What is your system? What is your strategy to do that? And so what we found at a very high level is that to develop volunteers ongoing, it's less information, more inspiration. Less information for volunteers, but more inspiration for volunteers. I'm telling you right now, I get more out of staying connected to volunteering at my church as an 8th grade small group leader. When I see baptism stories and they send me a link of a student's life that's been changed and I hear a story and they share stories with me. And what we found most churches are doing when we went out and studied is they're putting people in meetings. Listen, informational meetings and update meetings and getting people together every month to just have a meeting is a terrible way to keep people fired up, motivated, and moving forward as a volunteer. And so we found that inspiration trumps information when it comes to volunteers. And you can tweet that, remember it, but I'm telling you, it is the absolute truth. If you want to develop people, if you want to keep people for the long haul, if you want to develop volunteers, inspiration trumps information every time. Give them less information. They don't need to know all the information you send. They don't need to know the weekly email that you send. I promise you, most of it's getting deleted, not looked at, not clicked on. What they need and what will keep them going is understanding that they are a person and asking them questions. Do you have a system where somebody says, how's your family? How are you doing? And connecting. I know at North Point they're doing such a great job. They have a system set up to where you meet with the person that's over you, and you meet with them a couple of times a year, and they're talking to you about your family, your life, your business, what's going on with you. Do you have that built in? Does that happen systematically? And you may say, yeah, we meet with people, but is it systematically? Does that happen all the way through your ministries? Do you have it set up to where people are being inspired, not just informed? Because that's where development happens. And so part of Volunteer Rocket is that we've done this for you, just like we do. This is what the Rocket Company is. We're fired up about doing stuff for you. And we have volunteer ministry thank you note templates. We've already written thank you notes for you that say, thanks for serving twice a month on the parking team. Help people find a place to park. Lets them know we care about them. This is a thank you note that you would handwrite. We've already done it for you. All the stuff's done. So literally, we can help you with your thank you system. It's already done for you. So we've already thought it through. It's done. We've tested it in churches. It's ready to rock and roll, and you can be a part of it. That's Volunteer Rocket. This is the fifth part of the volunteer ministry. So we've talked about you get a new volunteer in, you attract them, you build them up, you get them ready to go, you connect them, you make sure they know who they report to, who's on their team, who they're serving. D, you develop them. How do you have an ongoing system that develops them that's full of inspiration and it's just a little bit of information? And then number 5, how do you evaluate? And so evaluate is moving from feelings to facts about your volunteer ministry. Move from feelings to facts about your volunteer ministry. When you say, I feel like it's going well, that is not good. When you have facts that show that it's going well, that's when you know you're being successful. And you say, what do you mean? Well, here's the deal. Know the numbers. Do you know the numbers? Do you have a step-by-step philosophy for what numbers you need to know and when you need to know them? Here's a volunteer evaluation metrics that you get for being a part of Volunteer Rocket. It's already done for you of exactly what you need to know in a system to keep up with the matrix. And that's what you'll get in Volunteer Rocket, is to know the numbers. Do you have that? If you don't have it, you've got to have it. And so that's this whole thing. Attract, build, connect, develop, evaluate. Now, you're asking, what do we do with this? Well, I'm going to share with you some of the mistakes we see churches make when they hear this, when they get exposed to this, and some of the mistakes I've made with it. But before we do that, I want to let you know what Volunteer Rocket is, because a lot of people are asking the question, what is it and how do I get connected? Well, it is a product that you get, and you get 7 modules. It's built in where you get 7 modules called Volunteer Rocket, and Volunteer Rocket will help you beat burnout, increase motivation, and increase the amount of volunteers that you have in your church. And so Volunteer Rocket is a 7-step coaching program to help you gain, train, and retain volunteers. It's 7 steps. It's sequenced out. It's one of the best rockets that we've ever produced because it's in order and it's step by step and it's clear on how to move and how to create a system. It is the volunteer system for every volunteer area in your church. Not just one volunteer, any area where you have volunteers. We have all of the ready-to-use resources. I've showed you 5 of them in the different things. We have the matrix. We have the thank you notes. We have all the scripts. Where you say attracting, what do you have for attracting? Well, we have the sermons that you can preach, all kind of stuff. And here's the best part. It's not just what the Rocket Company thinks, because that doesn't matter. What matters is real churches. And so we have real church examples that matter, where you can look inside real churches and see what's happening and see the interviews of what they're doing behind the scenes. And so we expose you to all the real church examples. So here's the 7-step coaching program that we're so fired up. I cannot wait to tell you about it. I'm so excited. I know I'm talking fast. I know I'm talking loud. I know I'm talking passionate. But get fired up. Tweet that. Facebook it. Here we go. 7 steps. You're going to get inside of every all the 7 steps. You're going to get a video to play. You're going to get a PDF, and you're going to get audio coaching. So you're going to get 3 forms of coaching. One you can watch, one you can read, one you can listen to. So your whole team has access to all of this. You can print out the PDF and train your team for the 7 modules. You can train them on the 7 modules. We've created a training for you as a pastor, for you as a leader, where you have the opportunity to share this stuff with your team, which is so awesome because it goes in a sequenced way and you get it. So the first thing you get is the foundations of a healthy volunteer ministry. This is module 1, and what you're going to do is you're going to get a survey of your volunteer ministry. So you're going to know how healthy you are, where you got to know where to start. And so the output, the benefit is that you're going to leave module 1 with clear vision. You're going to know exactly what you're doing. Your people will know exactly what you're doing. You'll have a clear vision for a volunteer ministry, not just volunteer positions, because that's where churches screw up, is that they get volunteers in and they just plug them in and they burn out. But you're going to have a clear vision for the entire ministry. Isn't that awesome? Organizing a volunteer ministry, module number 2. You're going to get the complete volunteer organizational chart. And I teach this session and I walk you through how to have an org chart. Here's what the org chart does for your volunteer ministry. It's less stress. You don't wonder anymore how many positions you got to fill. You don't wonder how long people are committed. You get all that done on the front end. Listen, At North Point, they knew how many small group leaders they needed, and they asked me for a 3-year commitment as a volunteer, and I said yes. Why? Because they had their stuff together, and they knew exactly what they were doing and exactly how many they needed and how long of commitment they needed for. It reduces stress. How to involve more people in volunteer ministry. This is about attracting people in. You're going to get a clear attraction plan out of this. You're going to know exactly how you're going to attract more volunteers into your ministry. And so here's what you're going to get: as many volunteers as you need. That's a bold promise. But I promise you, if you will have an attraction plan and you will have the org chart done from module number 2, you will have as many volunteers as you need. You will know exactly how many you need, and you'll have a plan to go get them. How to train your volunteers without wasting anybody's time. Module number 4, this is the B part of the funnel that we talked about. You're going to get a clear training plan for all volunteers. And so training meetings, people will love, is what's going to be the benefit. You're going to get training meetings that people actually want to come to and actually want to be a part of. Why? Because they're going to be thought through. They're going to be good. They're going to be concise. They're going to be quick. They're going to be to the point. Because listen, we have a bunch of information we want to tell people, but the volunteers don't want to hear it. We've seen it. We've studied it. We've researched it. We've lived it. We're going to give you training meetings that work. How to connect volunteers quick so they stick. You're going to get the 30-day onboarding checklist is going to be the homework that you're going to get. And then here's going to be the benefit. Nobody's going to fall through the crack. Remember what Bill Hybels said. Bill Hybels says a new volunteer is a fragile volunteer, and that's what this is that nobody is going to fall through the cracks. Module number 6 is how to keep volunteers inspired and engaged. You're going to get a written plan to appreciate your volunteers. So you're going to know exactly, you're going to have an appreciation system. And then here's what's going to happen. You're going to eliminate this phrase in your volunteer ministries, that I'm taking a break. That's what volunteers love to say. No, I love the church, I love all this, but I just need to take a break. It's busy at home, it's busy. No. We're going to eliminate the phrase I'm taking a break, because they're going to be so loved on, so cared for, that they want to be a part. They get your information, they get your communication, they get your inspiration, and they want to stay, and they want to be connected. And then the last module is how to monitor the effectiveness of your volunteer ministry. And just about every church, most churches do not do this well. And here's what you're going to get is this personalized dashboard. And the dashboard is going to take out the guesswork. There will be no more guesswork. You will know where your volunteer ministry stands, and you will know the numbers, and you will have a dashboard that shows you, is my children's ministry effective? As a pastor, you don't need to ask, you don't need to just say we feel like it is. You need to look at numbers. It is crazy not to look at numbers. And you say, well, people aren't numbers. Yes, they are. Here's the reality. Every person on a spreadsheet, every number on a spreadsheet represents a soul of a human being and a volunteer that you have the opportunity to help them become more like Jesus Christ. And so numbers do matter. You don't have to be all about the numbers. 4 of the other steps are relational, but you got to have one that keeps us in balance and lets us know, are we staying on track? Is this the right thing? So you're gonna get, that's the 7-step process. It can't get any better than that, guys, but it does. Time-saving, ready-to-use resources. You're going to get a volunteer health survey. You're going to get a culture worksheet to show what's the culture you're developing in your volunteer area. You're going to get complete sermon on volunteering, so you can stand up and give it to your pastor, or if you're the pastor, you can preach it on volunteering. It's done, and it's outlined, and you can preach the sermon and attract more volunteers into your ministry. You're going to get the sign-up card that goes along with the sermon, so you can attract people in, and it's done for you. A complete training meeting, so the meeting is done for you. You get a complete training meeting, so you can see how to do it right and just operate the meeting on, we've done it for you. You're going to get, this is worth so much money, I can't even, this fires me up. You're getting 100 job descriptions from real churches, real positions, where you, instead of making up all this stuff from scratch and starting with a blank sheet of paper, you're going to get 100 job descriptions for volunteer ministries, and you're going to be able to print these out, change them up, tweak them up, put your logo on it, whatever you need to do, but it's so much better from starting from scratch. 100 job descriptions. Unbelievable. You're going to get the 30-day onboarding checklist. You're going to get thank you note scripts. You're going to get inspirational emails. You're going to get inspirational emails for an entire year where you can send them out and they inspire your volunteers, not just informational emails that they could care less about. And so these are written for you. They're done. You don't have to write them. You're going to get a complete appreciation event. Hey, Get fired up on this. The event that's all about appreciating your volunteers. Family ministry application. So you're going to get the application for people in your family ministries that's going to weed weirdos out and allow people with the background checks and all asking the right questions to get people that will be connected into your volunteer ministry in the family ministry so that you have the right steps in place. You're going to get church examples and interviews. Here's the church examples and interviews you get. We're interviews from North Point Ministries, Church of the Highlands in Birmingham, Alabama, New Spring Church, Pastor Perry Noble's church, Granger Community Church, Fraser United Methodist, and Revolution Church, and we have a couple others as well that you'll get as bonuses. All of that, $2,500 for the coaching. Absolutely worth it. We walk you through these. We coach you through these systems and the how-tos. $1,200 in resources. Listen, the resource vault is worth just 100 job descriptions are worth so much, and the samples and examples worth $400. Total value of Volunteer Rocket is $4,100. $4,100. And here's what you can do. Test drive it for free for 14 days. Everything I told you, you can start the process of test driving it free for 14 days. Because we know the value of test driving. I know that if I'm going to buy a car, I want to go drive it around. We want you to drive it around. We want you to test us out. We want you to say, is this worth continuing? We want you to ask the tough questions of our company and ask the tough questions of our resources. We want you to see, is this worth it? Because we know that it is. And so here's the deal. It's $99 a month for 7 months or $599 one time. That's the normal payment for Volunteer Rocket. But you get, this is awesome. You get this offer, and this will never be offered again on any other webinar that we do as it relates to Volunteer Rocket. Here it is. You can get into this for $79 a month for 7 months. That's it. That is it. Or you can pay $497 one time. And you said, I thought it was free. It's a test drive for 14 days to see if you like it. But you pick your payment plan on the front end and you can get in. But you have to get in now because this webinar is the only one we're going to do this, and it's limited time for you to get this. It's the early introductory price that you're never going to get again. And you say, well, are you just saying this to sell something? Absolutely. And here's why. How much is it worth? Is it worth $79 a month or to not have burnout volunteers? Just one of them. What if you save one volunteer? Think about the giving impact of people in your church that if they had better volunteer experiences, they would give more money to your church. I promise you, if you went to a volunteer and said, should we spend $79 on an appreciation event? Should we spend $79 getting better at volunteering? Should we spend $79? Absolutely. And I believe in this with my whole heart, and I believe in this process. I believe in the resources. I believe in the interviews, and we have quality stuff, and it's only $79 a month. And I think to not jump into the free trial, you're just going to be missing out. Why wouldn't you? Unless you just don't trust us as an organization, but we've been around for 5 years, whatever it is, I don't know. But on top of this, you can reach out to us, you can ask us a question, but that's the offer. And what you need to do is click the button below. If you want to get in at the $79 and not the $99 a month, you need to click the button below and you need to get in before we take this down. So I want to go back to the model, and I want to get back to a couple of last-minute points and last points that will help you in doing this model. So get in Volunteer Rocket, go join, click the button now, get fired up, sign up, but then also don't miss these things because here's some mistakes churches make. Here's what you got to know about this model. Even if you sign up for Volunteer Rocket, you got to know this, is that somebody has to wake up every day thinking about each step. Who wakes up thinking about attracting new volunteers? Who wakes up thinking about building, connecting, developing, evaluating? And so inside of Volunteer Rocket, we train you that you cannot wake up and think about all these things. You have to have other volunteers that do it. And when I was a volunteer, we built an entire volunteer team of people that ran the volunteer ministry in guest services and children's ministry. And so we had people that were recruiters. We had people that did the training. We had people that connected people that did ongoing development. I had a banker lady who literally sat at a bank, and her volunteer role was to evaluate numbers for us of how many people are showing up. Are they signed up to the show up and all that stuff? And so we're going to teach you that, but somebody's got to wake up thinking about each step if you're going to be successful. And here's what we found is that most people are only good at one or two of these steps. And so I know I'm good at attracting. I'm about an A+ at attracting new volunteers. I do really good at getting new people in to volunteer ministry. And I do about a B at connecting. I'm not good at building. I'm not good at developing. I'm not good at evaluating. I'm just not good at those. I'm good at attracting and connecting. That's where I'm naturally gifted. And so we had to build the team around the other areas where I'm weak. And so many volunteer ministries, whether you're a children's ministry, guest services, a board, whatever it is, when you're running volunteer areas, is that you have people that are trying to do all of this stuff. You can't do it all. We're not all gifted in these ways. And so there's about a maximum of about 2 things that only you can wake up thinking about, and you got to build other volunteers around the other areas. And so I'm going to tell you the 3 mistakes churches make, and then we're going to we'll close out this. But these are huge. These are the mistakes churches make when they start operating off this model. And so we want to save you from these. And so here's what it is that a lot of churches, they'll just pick 2. And here's what most churches do, is they attract. So they say, we need new volunteers. Then they connect. They just throw them to the fire. And here's what happens. Burnout. Because you don't take the proper time to build them up. You don't take them through a proper time of getting them on board. We just know we have urgent need, and so we get a volunteer in, we plug them in. That is a terrible strategy. It is not good. You should slow down so you can speed up in the future. And you say, what does that mean? That if you do attract, then you put them through a build process, you eliminate burnout. When you build them up, you eliminate burnout on the back end. And I'm telling you, when you just throw them into connecting them, if you just take a guy that says, I want to lead a small group, and you just throw him into a small group with minimal build-up and minimal vision clarity and minimal job clarity, they're going to burn out. They're not going to stay. And so you're going to have a rotating door of volunteers. We see that happening all the time. The other one we see is, and this happens a lot with there's care people, and so they're people that they just care for people and they love people and they're so patient, is that they'll have a system to build up people, and they think about developing people and having people that they just love on them all the time. But here's what happens. No growth. And here's what happens, because you're not natural, you're more pastorally than you are of like growth or evangelism. And so you're not attracting or you're not connecting, but you're just building people up and you're developing. People feel loved, they feel connected, they feel inspired. Burnout is not your issue because you're just so connected to your volunteers, but there's not massive growth happening. You're not attracting and recruiting a bunch of new volunteers. And so we usually see that's another side. So it's either 1 and 3 or 2 and 4. And then this is the last one that we see, is that we see volunteer ministries that do well at attracting and building and connecting and developing, but they don't evaluate. And if they're not evaluating and having the metrics and the numbers set aside for how the volunteer ministry is doing, here's what happens. You end up being clueless. And you operate off of feelings, not facts. And what happens is that ultimately the people you thought you attracted and that you thought that was going to the training and you thought they were being connected right and you thought that they were being developed, you're not evaluating it, and so you're clueless. You don't know the proper information, and what happens is the ministry gets away from you. And erosion will start to happen in your volunteer ministry because you're not evaluating the right numbers and knowing the facts. And so that's what we see happen. Those are the 3 mistakes with this model that we see people happen all the time. They either do a 1 and 3, a 2 and a 4, or they'll do the 1, 2, 3, 4. They do that great, but they're not evaluating. And so they end up being clueless when it comes to, not clueless people, just clueless to the health of the ministry, and it gets away from them. They wake up one day and go, I thought we recruited 100 new volunteers. I thought we recruited 10 new volunteers. Why are we having to go back and do this? What's going on? And they don't know the numbers of how well it's working. And so that's how the model works and breaks down. So what will happen if you implement in your church, if you implement this ministry model for volunteering, your volunteers are going to be more effective. Your volunteers will be more effective if you do A, B, C, D, and E. You will accomplish more ministry. What we find is, and this is so backwards in a lot of ways, is we have like, what does our volunteer ministry have anything to do with growth? It has so much to do with growth. Your church can grow when your volunteer ministry grows because the pastors aren't just sucked in their time, and ministry leaders and directors, their time is not sucked up in doing all the work. They have other people doing the work, and so you can accomplish more ministry. You can grow. You can think about the future because you're not worried about our people showing up this Sunday. You have it in place. And then this is a huge benefit. Every church I've consulted with on a Giving Rocket perspective, when they have strong volunteers, the giving will increase. The giving will increase in the church. And last but not least is that the gospel will go further. And you say, why will the gospel go further? Well, the gospel goes further because if you have a healthy system, God set our earth up in a system. There's different seasons. There's spring, there's summer, there's fall, there's winter, There's all the different seasons. There's all the ecosystem. There's the animal system. There's the way things work. There's our bodies. There's everything set up in systems. And so when you have systems in place, it creates a smooth environment for things to go further and go faster. And the gospel will go further faster because you will have people that are inspired, fired up, inviting their neighbors, wanting to talk about your church and say, this is the best place I've ever volunteered. This is the best place I've been a part of. You should come with me as well. And so this is what Wayne Cadero said when he talks about doing church as a team. And I'll end with this. He says, I'm convinced that the influence of a church has on its community will be determined in large part, not by the personality of the pastor, not by the size of its building or how long the ministry has worked in the community. It will be determined instead by the percentage of involvement in the ministry of each member. Did you hear that? That's huge. This marks the transition from attendance to ownership, from being consumers to contributors. Guys, if you want to know why this matters so much, why we care about Volunteer Rocket, it's because we think this matters and makes a difference. And so that's why we are so passionate about you joining this 14-day trial, because we believe when your church does volunteer betters, the gospel will go further and it will go faster. So join below, 14-day trial. Every person listening to this should jump in. And even if you don't have buying privileges and you got it approved, you got 14 days to figure out. We're not going to charge you anything. So 14 days trial, go ahead, get started, jump in, and start becoming the best volunteer ministry that you can be. Click the link below to join Volunteer Rocket. We want to thank you for this webinar. We hope the model has helped you on how to gain, train, and retain volunteers. Thanks for being here. We love you guys. God bless. And we will see you on Twitter. We'll see you on Facebook. Email us with any questions and go ahead and jump in, get started, get fired up.